For most of the public, probate real estate is a mystery, a topic rarely discussed, unless you happen to find yourself in the middle of a probate situation. Well, this is why I love hosting this show, because we are able to bring to you an array of real estate topics. So, once again, welcome back to the Stella Homes podcast, where we talk about all things real estate. I'm your host and favorite Georgia realtor, Stella Harris. Remember, please hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and please share this informative show with your friends, family, and associates. Today, we are diving into a topic that impacts more people than you may think: probate. And if you've ever dealt with property after a loved one has passed, or you're curious about how probate affects real estate, this episode is for you. Today, I am joined by the brilliant Tamarra Wood, a seasoned probate attorney who specializes in guiding families and real estate professionals through the probate process. So, let's get into it. Tamarra, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so happy to have you.
Thank you so much for having me, Stella. It was truly a pleasure and an honor. I'm hoping that we can shed some light on this really sometimes cumbersome process called probate administration.
Exactly. Probate, very important topic that most people really don't know too much about. Like I said in the beginning, unless, they find themselves in the middle of it all of a sudden. So
Exactly.
before we, jump right in, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, my name is Tamarra. So to be Tamarra Stuppard-Wood,
Mhm.
and I have been practicing for a little over 15 years now. I started in estate planning, drafting wills and trusts,
Mhm.
and I also started with a small tax boutique. I spent some time in corporate America working for Goldman Sachs, where we did comprehensive financial planning.
Mhm.
There, I really saw how important it is to have your things together
Mhm.
to avoid issues with probate,
Mhm.
particularly large real estate properties, right? We had these
Right.
clients, they would pass away and have nothing in place,
Mhm.
and we had to assist them, but we
Mhm.
were a financial company, so how could we assist them, right?
Right, exactly.
So I've done that for some time, and now I'm private practice, and I get to help families throughout the entire process every day.
And congratulations on your growing private practice.
Thank you so
They
much.
do. You guys are doing an amazing job over there.
Thank you. We're located right here in the heart of Marietta, a mile away from the courthouse.
Mhm.
So we get to serve friends and family alike, and
Mhm.
it's been a great journey.
Fantastic.
Yes.
So, for most of our audience who are not familiar with probate, even just the meaning of it,
Right.
what exactly does probate mean, and why is it so critical and important?
Okay, well, first, probate is the court where this all takes place, right? There's a probate court.
Mhm.
And one of the things that happens in probate court is something called probate administration.
Mhm.
That's when someone passes away.
Mhm.
So, probate administration is administering the estate, settling the estate. But there's a couple of things you got to think about when you're doing that.
Mhm.
One, we got to get somebody appointed to administer the estate,
Right.
right?
Right.
And then the other thing is if there's no will, who could be the person that could probate that estate? So locating family,
Mhm.
looking at the succession of that family to identify who are the legal heirs.
Mhm.
And then you're going to take care of debt. You're going to transfer assets. And you're going to sometimes have to advocate for those that can't advocate for themselves, such as
Right.
children that lose their parents,
Wow.
incapacitated adults. So all of that is in the probate or a part of the probate process.
Mhm.
And probate can get really complex when we're talking about real estate
Right.
because there's usually a lot of titling issues, right?
Exactly.
Property has been passed down for years and years, but never corrected or the deed never addressed. So
Exactly.
probate can help us address those issues, but it can become really complex when things haven't been done properly.
Exactly. And that's why I wanted to have this conversation today, because it happens more often than we know or that we think about.
Yeah.
And really, that's the problem. We don't think about
Well,
it.
think about it. I think people just feel like, hey, I'm working hard. I'm doing all these great things for my children. Quality of life is great, but nobody thinks about when I pass away, what is going to happen?
Exactly. So, what are some of the misconceptions about probate?
Oh my
real estate
goodness.
specifically.
Oh, that's the street committee. So people come up with their own definitions or thought process of what's going to happen. But the biggest misconception I feel is that people think married couples
Mhm.
or families that's lived in a home all of
Mhm.
their lives that property is going to go to them
Automatically, right?
automatically. Sometimes it's the cousin or it's the play auntie. You're
Oh,
not there. You're not going to receive that property. Or just because you were married, nothing happens automatically. And particularly, we're in Georgia, and this is not a community property state. So what that means is it may not necessarily go to that spouse automatically,
mhm.
right?
Right.
So that's one big misconception. The other big misconception is I don't really need an attorney. I got it, right?
Right,
I
right.
can handle it. They don't realize that there's a fiduciary duty, and breaching any of that duty, even if it's unintentional,
Mhm.
could be a felony.
Mhm.
Number three, I would say, is the uh, inability to even understand that there has to be someone with legal authority.
Mhm.
Just because you have a will
Right.
doesn't automatically mean that you avoid the probate process. Actually, it's a green ticket right into probate administration.
Oh my gosh. And it's funny you say that because as a realtor, I have seen families who want to sell quickly.
Yes.
And then unfortunately, oh my gosh, all of a sudden I'm like, what happened? Title? Huh? Lien? What?
Exactly.
Okay. So, what are some specifics as to how probate real estate can affect the sales of a home?
Okay, well, first of all, if it's probate property,
Mhm.
you cannot sell that home.
Exactly.
You cannot do anything as it relates to that home.
Number one. So we probably want to piggyback a little bit actually on how can we prevent it from being a probate property? And then
Getting your estate planning done.
there we
That's
go.
part of the process, right? That's the lifeline. So first, you want to have either a last will and testament
Mhm.
or a trust.
Mhm.
Okay, we don't have to dive into that today.
Well, you'll be back though to
That-
dive into it, right?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
good.
But you want to have some type of device that specifies how that asset needs to be transferred, particularly real property.
Mhm.
Now you have deeds. Here in Georgia, we have something called a transfer on death deed. Because
Yes.
there's a lot of creative things you can do to ensure that your family receives that property. But once we have already gotten to the probate side, you need to make sure that you either administer the will,
Mhm.
get someone legally appointed to make
Mhm.
decisions because that mortgage company is not going to talk to you.
Mhm.
Those closing attorneys are not going to talk to you until you have
Mhm.
legal authority, or you have to do something called a petition for letters of administration where you appoint someone.
Mhm.
And it's not just anybody.
Mhm.
You can't just say, hey, I like that property across the street. Can I go ahead and probate it?
Right.
You have to be an interested party, a legal heir, in
Mhm.
order to bring that petition to the court.
Fantastic. So an interested party is a legal heir.
That's correct.
And anyone else?
It could be a creditor.
Okay.
It can also be, let's say, if all of the heirs consent. So
Mhm.
I often serve as fiduciary,
Mhm.
where heirs maybe just don't understand the intricacies of serving in that role. So
Mhm.
they'll hire me and I'll do it for them.
Mhm.
And then if they consent, then I can be a professional fiduciary on their behalf.
Well, fantastic. So, as a realtor, I want to look out for my other realtor friends and colleagues. So, how important is it for us to collaborate and work hand in hand with a probate attorney, someone as yourself?
That's
for
right. It's
instance?
essential. Okay. I, just like yourself, I have close relationships with realtors that I know will be able to understand the market side.
Right.
Make sure, because one thing that you have to focus on is it's not just making sure that we can sell that property, it's making sure we do what's right by the heirs, what's in the
Mhm.
best interest of the estate. So I rely on realtors like yourself that's going to make sure that you do the proper analysis, the due diligence,
Mhm.
so that we can show the heirs that we're doing everything that's in their best interest.
Mhm.
And that I, on the administration side, can make sure we do everything in accordance with the law and the court.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And I love working with you, Tamara, because you know your stuff. You're a professional. You've been doing this for years and you've never let a family down.
I
So-
promise that's not too.
So, I mean, she's really one of the tops here in Georgia. Fantastic. So let's help, these families out that are not familiar with probate,
Yeah.
especially, real estate.
Yeah.
What are some mistakes to avoid?
Mistakes to avoid.
Pitfalls to not step into.
I think the first thing is just not even setting up an estate.
Right.
You have families that'll get started or they'll start making changes to the home or upgrades, and they spend all this money and they're not even supposed to be touching the property, right? And so then they're upset that they've spent all this money and they possibly can't even recoup those funds,
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
I think the other mistake is not identifying the right person to serve. Sometimes you want to have your oldest child serve, or my uncle who's my best friend, but that might not be the most responsible person,
Right, right.
That might not be someone who's available and ready to show up at closing and
Mhm.
file things at the courthouse, right? So we
Right.
gotta make sure that we take care of those. And then I think the most important thing is to make sure that the person you choose has good relationships with everyone,
Oh, wow,
right?
that's true.
Because a lot of
Yes.
times fight happen because I don't even like you, Aunt Sally. And I
Exactly.
feel like you're trying to do something to hurt me. I feel like you're stealing from me, right?
Right.
That's not the best person. You want
Right.
someone who's going to be amicable, who has good relationships, and is very trustworthy.
Oh, that is so important.
That
What a
is,
great, great, insightful tip.
yes.
Someone that everyone trusts.
Trust is is the key word.
Yeah.
Because a lot of disputes arise not because someone's doing wrong,
Right.
because they feel that someone's doing wrong.
Right.
And the issue with that is even though we might be doing everything right, they can still object and cause a lot of fees and legal fees to accumulate in the estate.
That are unnecessary.
Unnecessary.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Well, wow. Families, right?
Families. And because, when dealing with probate, people think that this area law is so boring. I tell them this is where it gets really interesting because you're dealing with all of the family trauma.
Mhm.
You're dealing with all the unsaid things that happened during their life.
Right.
Dealing with all the unresolved issues. That's what I got to deal with. I get to deal with the tea kettle that everybody wanted because they weren't allowed to go to grandma's house before she passed away.
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
So you have to make sure that you address those issues before filing, so that way we can have an easy, amicable filing process.
Great tips. Great tips. So we love real world
Yes.
stories here.
Absolutely.
Real world examples.
Yep.
So, I mean, it lets, people know, our audience know, hey, this has happened.
Exactly.
Okay. So, give us a good, maybe a good, positive feeling story.
Well, I did mention that, with the will, it's a direct ticket to probate, right? But let's say we have Miss Bertha, right? Miss Bertha had 5 children. She talked to her children before death. She sat in front of them, and maybe they had a family meeting and they talked about what Miss Bertha wanted, who she wanted to serve, and why, right? And all of the siblings were already in understanding and on the same page as to what should happen. So then when we file that will, everybody knows the oldest daughter is going to serve, right?
Right.
Everyone's going to sign their acknowledgments,
Right.
and everyone's going to sign something called a consent and release and give her full power.
Okay. Okay.
And so now she doesn't need to get the court's approval to sell that property,
Very good.
right? She's already designated who's going to make the decisions, and we know this is a responsible party.
Good.
And everyone is going to understand that they're going to get a certain portion and they know exactly when they're going to get it.
Oh, I love
So now we filed this petition. We
Mhm.
don't have to do any publication. And we could probably get our letters within a few days. That speeds up the process. And the realtor, right? You can go ahead and list that property. You can go ahead and get, what you feel is fair. Everybody's in agreement.
Right.
Yeah, so we could sell that property probably within 30 days.
Wow. I
Right?
love it. I love it.
Yep.
And
And then even when it's time to close out that estate, again, everybody's in agreement. We sign it off and we're done.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Now give us, unfortunately,
Fun.
yes.
But
we like to call it as, to avoid the pitfall.
Exactly.
Story, avoid the pitfall.
Oh my gosh. Okay. And I'm not gonna use any names because, but I mean, I'm not obligated to. But I would say one story I have is a neighbor that I had, an old neighbor, and the home was already in foreclosure. The property had been abandoned for over 5 years. And the only reason it was triggered for them to reach out was because they were getting all these investment calls and they found out the property's in foreclosure. So now we are moving at 60 days. The mortgage company is not going to tell you what you can do to save the property. So now we're having to file a request for emergency letters. It becomes expensive, right?
Wow. Yeah.
We're trying to locate heirs,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They don't have addresses.
Right.
They don't talk to each other. They don't like each other. So
Oh.
now we have to do something called an affidavit of diligent search. We're trying to find them. Now we have to appoint somebody called a guardian ad litem to go look for them. All of this is accumulating expenses, right? By the time we get to the closing table, we have to take care of tax liens. We have to take care of maybe some outstanding bills that are there. It took us almost 2 years to get to the closing table, and we almost lost the home several times throughout that process.
Mm.
So that's the example that I don't like because I get those calls all the time.
Right.
"Hey,
Right.
I found out that our family home is going into foreclosure and we have 10 days."
Oh my
Very
God.
limited of what I can do. Typically, because I've been doing it for a while and I have
Yeah.
really strong relationships with courts, I can reach out and get those letters expedited.
Mhm.
But there's times where I can't do that,
Right.
and unfortunately, we do lose the property.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. Terrible. Terrible.
Yeah.
So, many of our listeners are not only, regular consumers, buyers and sellers, but they're also realtors.
That's right.
So what advice would you give some of our listener or some of our realtor audiences out there on how to handle the probate process or just probate in general?
Absolutely. I would first say, if you know that you're dealing with a probate property, find out if an estate ever was established.
Okay.
Okay. That
Okay.
would be the first thing. And if one has not been, I would say reach out to a probate attorney.
Period.
Because they're gonna identify issues right from the beginning
Mm-hmm.
before filing, before making any mistakes that may come about. Because I get a lot of referrals from realtors and from other attorneys, and they've already started the process. And I'm like, if I had known, I could have filed this petition for year support, and the spouse would have been protected. Or if I had known, we could have disqualified that father that never took care of their child, right? That's
Right.
probably in the air. We could have done a lot of things up front that would have resolved a lot of issues and saved time and money, right?
Right.
I would say number two, make sure your client understands that you want to honor whatever it is that the deceased person wanted to do. So
Okay.
they have
Yeah.
a letter, testamentary, or if they have a will, let's honor that.
That's so
okay?
important.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
sometimes, I know you're a realtor and we love our clients, but sometimes our clients don't want to do the right thing.
Sometimes.
So we have to talk to them, and sometimes it's maybe just bringing them in a room to
Yeah.
explain to them why it's important that they do the right thing.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And then I would also make sure that you get a copy of the deed and see if there's any deed issues that we need to address up front. 'Cause you don't want to get to the closing table and then find out that you have to fix title. There had been a prior estate, like grandma and grandpa left it for them, but they never established an estate for grandpa and grandpa. So we may have to go back and do that as well.
Right.
So you want to make sure you ask all those questions up front.
Fantastic realtor, my friends out there. Reach out to Tamarra. She's amazing. Now, what advice for homeowners and heirs would you
Yes.
want to provide?
I would say for homeowners and heirs, I know it's very difficult to do, but talk to your family, right? Have a conversation.
Yes.
You're always going to benefit more having that conversation than not. Okay.
Yes.
And if you're unable to have the conversation, if you guys just won't talk to each other, again, get an attorney. Sometimes I start off with just a conversation. And when people understand the process, they're more hesitant to start problems because most of it is just lack of understanding.
Right.
They'll say, I object because they'll say, recently I had one where she objected because she said the wife took all the assets and stole all the assets, not
Right.
understanding that anything that wife had jointly with the husband was her asset.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So it's just clearing that up beforehand
Right.
and just also helping them understand that as an attorney, we have to abide by the law. We
Right.
can't do anything that's illegal. And so
Exactly.
that gives them some comfort sometimes.
Yeah.
And then explaining the process and helping them understand I represent the estate.
Right.
Right?
Right.
I don't just represent one person and I have to serve the best interest of that estate.
That's right.
Yeah.
Wow. Fantastic. Tamarra, I have so many more questions. You're definitely going to have to come back.
Absolutely. I would love to.
There's so many more examples, so much more we can delve into in this topic, that's rarely discussed. Unless you're in the middle of it, like I said earlier, and then you're like, oh my gosh, what do I do? Who do I call?
And I tell people this all the time, don't sit on it.
Right.
Okay? I think people just don't move on doing their estate planning or even just establishing a estate because it's stressful. There's a lot of trauma there, a lot of anxiety. But if you feel like it's too much or it's too heavy, seek a professional. I'm saying we can get this done for you. And it doesn't matter how big or small, everyone has an estate and everyone is entitled to planning for their loved ones.
Absolutely, Tamarra. So please tell our audience, how can they reach you? How can they contact you if they have any questions? Something tells me you're going to be getting a lot of calls.
I would love that. And my passion is really helping people leave a legacy. I lost a brother at a really young age, and it always bothered me to try to remember that person.
Yeah.
How do we do that? And
Yeah.
I believe protecting our legacy allows us to do that.
Absolutely.
So I would say you can reach out. I have a website, Atlanta Estate Attorneys North.com. Okay. You can reach me on our office number, 470-387-8787. You can email me anytime. That's Tamarra W at ATL Estate Attorneys North.
Fantastic, Tamarra. And if you didn't get all of that, just reach out to me and I'll make sure to put her in contact with you.
I hope this was
Okay.
very helpful and valuable to everyone. And if you have any questions whatsoever, please don't hesitate to reach out.
All right. Thank you so much, Tamarra.
You're
Thank you so much for being here. And we look
for having me.
absolutely. I was going to say we look forward to having you back.
Absolutely. I'll be back and we could really dive into trust.
Exactly.
Plan.
There's just
Really,
so much.
There's so much out there.
So much
Yes.
to talk about.
Yeah,
Okay, good.
sure.
Good.
All right. Thank you, Stella.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for watching today's show. And remember to follow our show on this channel by subscribing below. And leave a comment to let me know your best takeaways from today's episode. Please also share this episode with a friend. I love building a community that's always learning, always growing, and always your universe for all things real estate. Until next time, I'm Stella Harris, and I'll see you soon.